I have been thinking about grace for some time now. We all know the phrases, there but for the grace of God, or may God bless you. But what if we don't believe in God? Are we cut off from grace? From blessing? And what do we say instead? May the force be with you? May the odds be ever in your favor? I do not believe we are cut off from grace because I've experienced it so many times. Maybe it's from some God force or from the universe. Or maybe it's just the result of paying attention at the right time to see a little glimmer of magic. Marla and I took the course entitled The Shared Pulpit through the UUA to learn writing skills and, we all hoped, the ability to write a good 20-minute discourse. We filled out applications to take the course. There were too many applicants for the class size. So then we had a Zoom meeting with the director of the program to petition for entry into the seminar. As we were talking with her about the timelines for the course, I was struck by the serendipity of us being there at all. I was skimming through the virtual UUA bookstore one day, and I saw the book, The Shared Pulpit, and I remembered that Marla had mentioned it in passing. So I Googled it and somehow bumped into the announcement of the upcoming class. I later learned that it had just been posted, and there were so many responses that it was soon taken down. If I'd Googled any earlier, or even a little bit later, I wouldn't know of, much less be participating in it. Then I thought of other little examples of serendipity that buzzed by, noteworthy in the moment, and yet already forgotten. Now that I'm looking, I see they keep happening in big ways and in small. I started to think about what serendipity is and what it is not. It's not a gut feeling. It's not a memory dredged up from one's mental warehouse. It's a thought or a roadside outside of the self. It's already there. The serendipity is happening to notice it at just the right time. It can be a little flash that leads to further developing a thought, to have a wondrous snapshot of an instant, to take the next left turn, despite what Google Maps recommends, or to create windows for Microsoft. Carl Jung called these synchronicities. He described them as non-causal but meaningful relationships between physical and psychic events. He posits that the synchronicity, in The Power of Coincidence, David Richo explains that the difference between coincidences and serendipity is meaningfulness. He posits that synchronicity occurs outside of linear time and beyond cause and effect. This Jungian therapist admits that instead of being able to keep a scholarly distance between himself and the matter studied, studying synchronicities allowed them to come at a more deeply felt level. He tells us they come from a state of grace, and the only word he can find to describe them is miraculous. I still prefer to call them serendipity. Events can be synchronous and awful. I want a name that focuses on whimsy and joy. So what is serendipity? Parlor tricks of the imagination? Silliness from a brain that remembers song lyrics from 6th grade, but not appointments this week? Pattern recognition over time and distance? I went to the Oxford English Dictionary, which trumped my feeble explanations with this most wonderful definition. Serendipity is the faculty of making happy and unexpected discoveries by accident. Who wishes they had that faculty? Who wishes their everyday life had room for it? And why doesn't it? My example was small nudges to look up an obscure book and then apply for a course with the author. That seems quite pedestrian. But unspoken is my joy in realizing that I hit everything at exactly the right time without having any knowledge of the timeline. I am notoriously bad at doing things at the right time when I do know the timeline. So this was a small miracle that I treasure. Other people have reported little nudges of intuition that told them to not board an airplane that crashed during the flight they had seats on. They told them to demand medical tests that had been deemed unnecessary until cancer or some other grievous illness was found. They told them to go to a particular social event where they met their future spouse. Some say that people attract these things when they operate at a higher, better level of consciousness, or they manifest good things because like attracts like. So it's a case of mindset and maybe a few New Age props. I say that is not so. These little acts of magic also happen when we're not in a higher state of anything. They can come to us in sickbed, while mourning, even while in real or metaphorical prison. They can be how one endures the illness, the profound loss, the incarceration. Choosing to look for and to act upon them means engaging with mystery, with the unknown and unknowable. Christians call this God's grace, and witches call it paying attention. Perhaps these glimmers are harbingers of grace. How long can we be unhappy or sad or bitter in a world where such magical things still have a foothold, where the occasional flash of beauty or a byway off the expected path is right around the next corner? Are they there simply for the seeing? Glimpses into the world's beauty and interconnection? Or are they teaching us to remember magic, to remember awe and whimsy, and to have the courage to look outside of the comfortable strictures of our lives? Writing this reminded me that my best friends and my motto in high school was, "That sounds logical, but it might work anyway." In the world of rationality, we were taught that if we didn't know where we were going, we wouldn't know if or when we got there. Everything needed a plan of action with steps and stages and a carefully designed endpoint. No less a sage than Bilbo Baggins warned his young cousin to take care when going out his door, for when he stepped onto the road, if he didn't keep his feet, there was no knowing where he might be swept off to. After decades of using deductive reasoning at work, it is a joy to be retired and able to set logic aside again, so I can simply see and feel the world around me. Now, when the focus is on being rather than doing, there is no point in all that mapping and routing, because there is no end point. The journey, with a few planned stopovers, is the end in itself. Weirdly, serendipity is en vogue in business circles. According to the website of itepinnovation.com, serendipity, the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way, has long been hailed as a powerful force in art, science, and innovation. It is the magical moment when a completely unrelated incident leads us to a breakthrough idea or a stroke of creative genius. Christian Bush, the author of The Serendipity Mindset, The Art and Science of Creating Good Luck, wrote in Psychology Today, serendipity is a driving force in great scientific discoveries, but it is also present in our everyday lives. We often unexpectedly find love, co-founders, a new job, a new idea, or business partners. You might think of serendipity as passive luck that just happens to you or others, when in fact, it is an active process of recognizing and connecting the dots. Smart luck is about seeing bridges where other people see gaps, then taking the initiative and action. In the Harvard Business Review, Franz Johansson wrote, "What if all of the well-planned and well-executed strategies people have told us about are really the result of unplanned meetings and encounters, random moments and events, serendipity and plain luck? What if the stories behind companies such as Microsoft, or Nokia, or Starbucks are the stories behind world-famous authors, index-destroying investors, and breakthrough scientists had a lot more to do with randomness than we might think? What if success or failure is just one unexpected moment away?" Sure enough, serendipity often is the story. By the end of the 80s, Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer had realized through rigorous analysis that Microsoft needed to abandon its still struggling new operating system, Windows, because of a memory flaw. They partnered up with IBM to develop OS/2 and decimated the Windows team. But there was a serendipitous, seemingly insignificant meeting at a party at the Redmond campus. Employee David Weiss met Murray Sargent, a non-employee stopping over en route to Germany, and their cocktail party banter led to a teasing joke. That joke suggested a solution to Windows problems. Within the hour, Weiss and Sargent were sitting down to solve the flaw and fundamentally alter Microsoft's future. And here I was, happy with the serendipity of getting into a class. But I said sometimes serendipity seems to me to be a glimmer of grace. I wondered what grace really is. So after diligently searching through reams and centuries of theological debate, Google found several answers. The first was that God's grace equals God's forgiveness. I assume that covers it for those of the Abrahamic faiths, but it doesn't work for those of us who don't worship that God. An organization called Shmoop depicts God's grace as you get salvation, and you get salvation, and you get salvation, and everybody gets salvation, without apparently realizing that that makes them universalists and possibly sets Oprah Winfrey up as God. Encyclopedia Britannica's definition, circa 2023, made the grace equals forgiveness equation much more splendid. It is the spontaneous, unmerited gift of the divine favor in the salvation of sinners. They then added a definition for the rest of us. Grace is the divine influence operating in individuals for their regeneration and sanctification. A role-playing gamer whose name has been lost in the vast halls of Reddit explained grace with a game strategy called tit for tat. During the first round, he is nice to everybody. In subsequent rounds, he treats each player the way that player has treated him. But occasionally, he is nice to one of the mean guys. That player may then be nice to someone else or keep being mean. But maybe another player saw this exchange and tried being nice to one who had not earned it. In this way, they create grace and watch to see if it spreads to become a communal grace. I think this is why drive-through customers at Starbucks sometimes pay for the person behind them. They hope to give a little grace and hope it spread. These actions fit the definition of secular grace as defined by David, the grateful atheist, on his website. Secular grace asserts human worth, dignity, and rights, and attempts to ethically follow all the implications from these assertions. Secular grace is a graceful life philosophy on how to live life well and thrive as a human being in all of our diverse expressions. Secular grace recognizes the very human need to experience connection, belonging, awe, wonder, and most of all, love. No gods required. The concept of secular grace acknowledges that there is nothing more valuable, moral, or ethical than people loving and accepting one another. I fear that definition ends with the last car in line at Starbucks. Something nice happened. Several people spontaneously joined in passing along kindness to strangers at about $5 each. Maybe they extended and expanded that feeling of undeserved kindness and the joy in giving that kindness as they went through their day. Maybe some people were open to receiving grace that morning. Maybe that moment at Starbucks was somebody's moment of serendipity. I think grace goes deeper than people being nice to each other. I talked to a friend who is a retired minister about this. They said grace came from the divine spark in each of us. That led us to Thou art God, as the man from Mars in Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land taught earthlings. UU minister Liz Lerner McClay said, grace is a gift that comes to us unbidden and unearned. We can't compel grace or entice it or strategize for it. It comes when it comes, and if we're lucky, it comes when we really need it. I think that's when we see it as such a sacred gift. When we're desperate, or drowning, or failing, or falling, and this gift comes, not just luck, it feels like more than luck. It's a blessing. This quote comes from Reverend McClay's sermon, summing up the time her church, First Unitarian Church of Providence, provided sanctuary to a family facing deportation. It was a summing up, not of what they provided to the family, but of the joy and grace they found in providing this daring act of kindness. In the support given by the wider community and by all they learned about themselves and each other. Many years ago, I was suffering from severe depression. After a few weeks of getting nowhere, my therapist asked me if I had any religious beliefs. I told him a little about my beliefs, and suddenly I had a true aha moment. I told him I had forgotten that if all life is sacred, I am sacred too. In my pain and sorrow, I had cut myself off from grace that could have made things bearable, that could have given me the mental and emotional space to stop reacting and to figure things out. I think there is a metaphysical reality to grace, which means we don't know yet what it is, but maybe, eventually, we will. I do believe there is a divine spark in each of us, even though I don't believe in any particular deity. I believe, as a witch, that divinity resides everywhere. The gods and goddesses, if there are gods and goddesses, or the divine force of the universe, are not transcendent. They are not out there somewhere. They are immanent, here with us, part of all that is. So grace is also immanent. We just have to be open to it. UU Minister Jennifer Hundley Batts reminds us that the miracle of grace is available to us even when it's been left untended. I think most of us long for grace, to feel that who we are and where we should be, doing what we should be doing, and to want to be able to do more for others than we already do. I think it is easier to feel that way in the company of like-minded people. Watch for the little glimmers of grace that appear and accept their blessing.